Welcome to Wadsworth History on Film, a program presented by the Wadsworth Area Historical Society and designed to preserve the oral history of Wadsworth. Our guest today is a wonderful person who has been around Wadsworth for a long time, but his company has been in Wadsworth for even a longer time, 140 years as a matter of fact, or very, very shortly will be 140 years, like in a month from now. And that's Toby Butt. Toby, say hello to everyone here because people know you as an icon in business in Wadsworth, but you know, as an icon in business, they would like to know who Toby is. Tell us a little bit about Toby. Toby Butt, where you were born, who your family is, and
Sure.
when you came to Wadsworth, all those kinds of things.
I'd be happy to, and thank you for having me this morning, Cesar. It's a pleasure to be here and share some of the information about Alan and Hartzell. We're really looking forward to this 140th anniversary celebration coming up here shortly. But a little bit about me. I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm a graduate of the University of Cincinnati.
What was your major?
Majored in political science.
Political science.
I'm a political science major.
And never used that, did you?
Never really used it, but I think it's a very, very broad-based background that prepares you for a lot of things in business, and I'm glad I did it the way I did it. So my family, I'm the oldest of 6 kids. We moved to Wadsworth in September of 1965.
Define we.
My parents, Dewey and Bernadine Butt, and my brothers and sisters, Todd, Tom, Tim, Terry, and Nancy, who are all younger than I am. We lived over on High Point Drive. My mother still lives in the home over there. She's 91.
91. Well, now you told her age. How about telling us your age?
My age is 64.
64. You were
Yes.
born what year?
1950.
1950. So we have to do that in this program because if people who watch it 50 years from now will not know what 64 meant. So,
Okay.
So you're born in 1950.
So you spilled all the beans on me.
You know, we just don't let people hide behind those things at all.
That's right.
Yes.
But I've been in Wadsworth since 65, went to the University of Cincinnati for 4 years, came back, served a little bit of time in the Ohio National Guard and basic training. And then
You're in Wadsworth?
In Barberton, actually. I was
Barberton?
part of the Company H over in Barberton
Company
for
H,
6
right.
years over there. And have been active in the business community of Wadsworth since basically I graduated from college in 1972. Took a position initially with the Equitable Life Assurance Company of New York, which is now AXA, and spent 3 years there. And then in 1975, was during the 100th anniversary of Alan Hartzell, was hired into the agency by Bill Snoke.
And Bill Snoke is very well known in Wadsworth as well.
Bill was very, very active, absolutely.
Very active in
yes.
Wadsworth.
Yep.
Alan and Hartzell has been around for 140 years, and we have had people after people after people. And perhaps during this program, we're going to be able to identify some of those people and to say where they were, where they are now, and so forth. Most of them are probably gone, I would imagine, because
Unfortunately, yes.
they were old people. Tell us about your family right now, children and so forth.
I'm married to Chris Ifelice. Her parents, Jim and Opal, were from town here. Our mother still lives here in town.
Tell us about the Ifelices having some kind of a...
They own Cook's Drive-In out
Right.
west of town,
Right.
out just west of the bowling alley out there on the other side of the street. It was a famous place for many years, and a lot of us used to eat out there regularly and drive through there and enjoy the drive-in that they had out there.
And is that how you met your wife?
No. Actually, Chris and I both grew up on High Point Drive.
Okay.
Knew who one another were, but Chris will tell you that she's significantly younger than I am, and we didn't know one another when we were in school.
That was a nice way of saying she didn't like you.
Well, yeah.
At that time.
We've hooked up several years later and have been married now for 17 years.
Oh, wonderful. That's great. Yeah, well, I know Jim Ifelice quite well, as a matter of fact. Now, when you were at the University of Cincinnati and you studied the whole genre of political science, what was in your mind to do? Probably was not insurance, was it?
It really wasn't. My dad had always been in sales. His career was with the old Sohio, Standard Oil Company of Ohio. Always had been in some type of sales. His background was electrical engineering, but the sales field had always been his vocation.
Well, you know, having worked with Ohio certainly was providential because Rockefeller, who started Standard Oil, married a Wadsworth girl.
Correct.
And Laura Spellman, S-P-E-L-M-A-N, no two L's in Spellman, just S-P-E-L-M-A-N. And when we celebrated her 175th anniversary, we got a call from her great-grandson who wanted to come to Wadsworth to see where his great-grandmother lived. And we unfortunately had to tell him that that was now a parking lot. We tore that down. Not the best thing that we could have done. We probably thought that maybe if he would have come, he might have left a few of his
yes.
with us, but he didn't.
Right.
He didn't
Right.
come. Now, you joined Allen and Hartzell when?
1975.
1975.
Yep.
So
August of 1975.
you're not a youngster either when it comes to.
Well, the agency will be celebrating its 140th anniversary the first of the year, and I will be celebrating my 40th anniversary in August next year.
So you were there when they started their 100th anniversary.
Right.
100th anniversary. Tell us who was there at the time when you first started. What did you do when you first went there?
Basically, I went in and started learning the property and casualty insurance business. I had had a background in the life insurance business from my 3 previous years with Equitable. Mm-hmm. And Bill Snoke had been after me for a couple of years to join the agency, and I finally saw the light, I guess, if you will, and felt it was the right time to make a move. Bill was the president of the agency. Very active on the insurance side of things, along with Dean Eicher, mm-hmm. who you're very familiar with.
Well, yes.
And Dean was an extremely talented insurance tactician. Mm-hmm. Enjoyed working with Dean for a number of years. We also had the real estate operation with Dick Krause heading that up. Mm-hmm. John Hollenbeck, Tom Gertner, Art Storm, Louise Bowling. Mm-hmm. There were a number of real estate agents that were part of that organization at that point.
You're drawing some wonderful names out of your hat on those
right.
people. They were good people.
And again, unfortunately, a group of people that are all gone today.
Everyone's gone, right?
But I really had the opportunity for a number of years. Bill passed away in 1982, and then Dean passed away in 1989. But during that time, I really had the opportunity to learn from what I feel were some of the best. Mm-hmm. Guys that could really teach you the business, teach you the community, and teach you about involvement in the community, quite honestly, which was tremendously important to our agency.
We have not interviewed any of those people that you just mentioned. How about giving us a little bit of the background on a couple of them?
Well, I know Dick Krause is an example, used to be a teacher and a coach here at the high school.
One of my teachers.
Okay. You know, Bill came from, I believe, Indiana to Wadsworth. Right. Mm-hmm. Dean was down in the Mansfield area working for one of the insurance companies and moved up here with his family. And, you know, it was just a real tight-knit group of people that everybody at that point resided in Wadsworth.
That's right.
Which is very different from where we have evolved to today, where people seem to be from all over.
Everywhere.
And I think it really meant for a much more cohesive and closeness as far as our agency and the personalities there.
Allen and Hartzell was not only a business, but they were also a partner in Wadsworth. And everything that happened in Wadsworth, highly respected, always highly respected. Tell us about the formation of Allen and Hartzell, when it started and how it started and who started it and so forth.
It goes back to January 1st, 1875. A gentleman by the names of James W. Dakin started the agency, and he was over on the northwest corner of the square in what is called the Myers Building.
That's Myers Building now, but it was the sheep shed at that time.
Okay, the sheep shed, all right. And he started the agency. Our original contract with Ohio Farmers Insurance Company, which is today Westfield Companies, is January 1, 1875.
1875, 140 years ago.
Yeah. So
now, when I say the sheep shed, it was not really sheep. The sheep weren't there. The structure looked like a sheep shed, and they had several little mini stores, what do you want to call it, had a newspaper in it and so forth. And the Dakin insurance agency, and they had a bar. There was a bar everywhere you went around in Wadsworth, and they had a barber shop. And the story goes from the annals of history that many of the insurance, what do you call them, policies, insurance policies, were executed in the barber shop. According to the...
That wouldn't surprise me in that day.
Yeah, in that day. And they also had a newspaper, but the newspaper didn't have too terribly much news. All it had was the stock prices. And when I'm saying stock, I'm talking about livestock, not your kind of stock,
right.
You know, money stock, but this is a livestock. Sheep were going at this much, and hogs were going at that much, and so forth. So that was where the insurance company was, in the sheep shed. In 1905, then they tore the sheep shed down and they built the Myers block. I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I wanted to give that.
Well, no, that's fine. That's good for me to know too, because a lot of this stuff I'm not familiar with, obviously. In 1906, Mr. Dakin passed away, and his son Arthur took over the agency, and half of the interest was bought by Lewis Allen.
Right, Lewis Allen. Now, Lewis, go ahead. I'm going to say something
Okay,
about
and
Lewis
then
Allen.
in 1908, Mr. Hartzell came from Washington, D.C., and joined the firm.
Which Hartzell was that?
That was Stephen B. Hartzell.
Stephen B. Hartzell.
Correct, yes, absolutely. And Mr. Dakin retired at that point. That was also the year, and I believe from the information I have, Mr. Hartzell was the one that initiated this, that Allen and Hartzell Real Estate began operation.
That's correct.
And as far as we know, we are certainly one, if not the oldest real estate operation in the state of Ohio.
When I researched this a few years ago for my book, no one contested it. So you can probably say it is, because I put it in the book.
Right.
And no one contested it, just as we have the first filling station in the country. And no one has ever contested that. So we can assume, until someone contests it, that we had the first filling station or a repair garage in the country, and it was on College Street. And no one contested the fact that Allen and Hartzell and Dibble, or it wasn't called at that.
It was not Dibble at that point.
At that
right.
time, just out, that was the oldest real estate company in the country.
Do you know what the population of Wadsworth might have been around 1875?
Oh yes, yeah, a little over 2,000.
Okay, because I know it wasn't until the mid-20s or late 20s that Wadsworth had 5,000
1931.
Okay.
January 1st, 1931, from the 1930 census. This is not accurate. However, according to the records, I was the third person born. We had 4,997 residents in the city of Wadsworth in 1930, at December 31st, 1930. I was born on January 5th of 1931, and I was the third person born in Medina County. I might have been the 5,000th person who tipped the scale.
Right.
Now, that is not historically accurate, but it makes a good story anyway.
Well, I'm glad you're also giving your age while we're doing this.
Well, yes,
today.
I am. Yes, I was born in 1931, so at this day, I'm 83 years old. Now, and as a result of being 83 years old, I just forgot what we were talking about. Tell me.
Well, and part of the history with a number of these people that are involved, and you and I have talked about this in the past, is the connection to the Huntsberger family in
Right.
town. And, you know, Allen and Hartzell seems to have had quite a connection throughout this community's fiber forever.
That's why I say that Allen and Hartzell was not only a business, but it was a partner in Wadsworth. And yes, the Huntsberger, and that was Ephraim Huntsberger, who was the first one to bring his family from Pennsylvania. And then Ephraim had Richard Huntsberger, who lived to be 104 years old. And Richard Huntsberger was the father of Willard Huntsberger, who was a teacher at Wadsworth High School for many, many years and taught most of his history.
It's amazing, amazing when you look at the history.
Yeah, they're all intertwined.
Yes, yes, it is, absolutely. So, and then, you know, as you look at things, I mean, after the real estate department was established, Hartzell purchased the remaining interest from the Dakin family. Allen and Hartzell started as an agency in 1914, basically, from what I can understand, and then moved from the Myers building over to our current location at 148 Main Street in 1917. And my understanding was that prior to that, that was the old fire station.
It was at one time, yes.
Yeah.
And there's a story about the fire station. They had a pump, which they pumped by hand. And then they finally were able to bring it up to a standard. This is from the history of the fire station. They were finally able to bring it up to a standard, but the pump was so big and the vehicle had to be so big that your store was no longer big enough for them, because it's only, I think it's only 16 feet wide, isn't it?
It's not, it's 20 something small, but it's not very wide.
No, not
Yeah,
very
you're right.
wide, so they had to move it, and they moved it into an old structure. I was going to say something derogatory, but it was a dilapidated structure, where the Wadsworth Bakery was, right north of the East Park. Okay. And then they had a place for people to assemble for plays and things like that upstairs. It's horrible, but that has nothing to do with this, but the fire station was at one time right there.
I've always felt that that was kind of ironic that an insurance agency ended up in the building where the fire department was at one time.
Good point. I never thought of that.
Yeah, that's something from our business that always is very important to anything we do, is having
absolutely.
a strong fire department in your community, and Wadsworth certainly does have that.
Well, you would have had some pretty cheap rates if you had the fire department right in your building.
Yeah, that would have really helped you. But, you know, further down the road in history, and one of the biggest drawbacks to us creating our history is in 1940, as you're well aware, we had the fire.
I saw it.
Thanksgiving weekend of 1940, our building completely burned, and we were out of that building until the following September. And unfortunately, all of our history that was contained in that building was destroyed. Mm-hmm. So anything prior to 1940, we don't have, other than what we've been able to dig from other places or what we've been told. Fortunately, a number of people over the years have given us things, walked in the office and said, hey, I found this in some old things we were going through. And I've certainly made an attempt to hang on to all of that information so that someone else down the road in the future will have that used to support any of our documentation that we need.
One of the newspapers, and I don't know which one it was now, it could have been the local paper, but I don't think it was, talked about the fact that the firemen came back home to douse out the fire. I actually saw the fire because I was in the school bus, I was going to school, and the bus went out school drive, which was nothing more than a cinder, bumpy road, and had to stop there because the fire department had its equipment out there and trying to douse the fire. Before the fire, and that's just for historical evidence, before the fire, the fascia was all white, it was supposed to be marble, but it wasn't. It's kind of glass. It was all white. And then when the fire broke out, the glass, and I suspect it was glass, probably very thick glass, began to crack, and you could hear it, and it actually came off the building. Then when they rebuilt it, they built it with brick, if you remember.
Right.
And it's still brick, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Still brick.
Yeah, that's a very, very solid building today. Yeah. I notice as we try to do things that you have to be careful because those walls are just solid masonry.
They are.
Down there. But unfortunately, you know, that kind of put a dent into what has happened in the past with Allen Hartzell. All of our minutes were lost, everything from that standpoint. There wasn't any way to protect those like you can with computers today and that type of thing. And as I said, we were out of there, and you mentioned the newspaper till the September of '41. When they reopened, the local paper basically did an entire paper that week. Mm-hmm. I think it came out once a week, on the agency and the grand reopening and all of the people that were part of that at that point. Fred Allen was the president, obviously.
Now, Fred Allen was Lou Allen's son.
Right, who
And
was an attorney.
Lou Allen was dead by that time, wasn't he?
I believe he was, yes.
Right,
yes.
and Fred Allen was a graduate of Western Reserve Law School.
Okay.
I knew him very well, too.
I never had the opportunity to meet him. When Bill Snoke purchased the agency from Fred in 1968, I believe it was, Fred moved to Florida, down to Naples, and unfortunately just never had the opportunity to meet him. I met his wife, I met his son, but you heard great stories about Fred Allen. He was quite a character, I guess, if you will, but a very astute business person.
Astute business person, quiet, unassuming, but who was it who said, which one president was who said, speak softly but carry a big stick?
That was Fred, huh?
That was Fred.
Okay.
Good man. What about the, and there's so much more to talk about 140 years of history, but what about some of the things that are happening, not necessarily today, but what were some of the progressions? Now, we have Allen and Hartzell, we had Allen, Hartzell, and Dibble, then we go back to Allen and Hartzell again, and the Dibbles.
Well, we had Allen and Hartzell and Clark. When McClark was part of the agency, there have been a number of people through that business in 140 years, obviously. Mm-hmm. A number of people who were part of the agency that eventually went off and started their own businesses. So I think that speaks very highly of the guidance and direction that they got, why they were part of the Allen and Hartzell team.
I'm glad you said that. Fred Allen told me one time, and I did not realize what that meant at the time, because I was only a high school kid when I worked next door at the B&B, and I was over back and forth all the time, and they were always over there buying candy and whatever they wanted to buy. But he said, the best thing a person can do to help somebody is to teach him and then release him. I'll never forget Fred telling me that. And that's exactly what you're saying right now.
And there have been a lot of those folks over the years that have gone off on their own and done their own thing from that standpoint. Again, you know, not only from an insurance perspective, but from a real estate perspective in the community, Allen and Hartzell back in the 50s, 60s, early 70s was a huge developer in the community.
Yeah, tell us what about the big one.
Right. Well, north of 261,
the
whole allotment, Highland
Heights.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All those roads up there, Crestwood, Eastwood, or Eastview. We built that whole development up there. Mm-hmm. We've built the Allen Donor Drive development, and all the way back through Winding Way and that area back there, the Hillsdale Circle development was all Allen and Hartzell. Bent Creek, obviously, was Dick Krause's development, and he lived there for a number of years. So there's a number of areas that not only were we involved in the listing and sales of properties, but the actual development of those. Harold Reese is a builder. Al George is a builder. It's a lot of different sections of town that we've touched over the years and still continue the real estate operation to this day. We're not certainly as active as we were during those periods of time, but things change, things evolve.
There's no more room to put them.
Well, you're true. I mean, there's spots here and there, but not to do that type of development where you're sticking hundreds of homes.
We had the one north of 261 was the Nixon farm. Part of it was Nixon farm. And when that actually started, that would have been probably, 1950-ish?
Yeah, 60s, right?
So maybe 60.
Right
maybe
around
60.
there? Yeah.
Wadsworth at that time was a group of small homes that had built 150 years ago to maybe 50 years ago or whatever. And all of a sudden we had this beautiful, beautiful grand display of upscale homes. We never had the upscale home. Well, we had a couple of them, but I mean the whole area was upscale home, and word around Wadsworth at that time said, well, they live in Highland Heights, you know. And that was the word, Highland Heights. And of course, Alan Hartzell had done that.
Well, and I'm sure at that particular time, those homes were very, very nice.
Oh, they still are.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. No question
They still
about
are.
that.
But but we had the older homes right here in Wadsworth.
Right. But yeah, we've done a lot of that type of thing, and as we all realize, I think over a 140-year period of time, things change, things evolve. You've got to keep up with what's going on out there, and whether it's been the insurance side of things or the real estate, that's one of the things we've been forced to do.
What are some of the things that have changed?
Well, automation has certainly been a major change on the insurance side of things. All of the policies used to be basically handwritten. Everything was billed from the agency, whereas today it's all produced off of computers at the companies and billed directly by the companies. Coverages have become much broader today. You look at the old homeowners policies, there never was such a thing at a point back then.
When did those come in?
The actual homeowners policies have probably been around since the 1950s, somewhere in that area. You used to have bits and pieces that you would buy. You would buy fire coverage, you would buy wind coverage, you would buy coverage for your structure, your contents, your liability, all separately. And then they started packaging that together. So, a lot of that stuff's changed. The legal environment has certainly changed all of our businesses today. I think anybody that's in business, can relate to that and understands that we've all got to be more cognizant of what's taken place relative to regulations and the things that kind of affect us from the legal end.
A question that I bet the listening audience would really like to know. In Wadsworth, all of Wadsworth is undermined, except for the southwest portion of Wadsworth. And we have mine shafts every single solitary inch underneath us here, except, as I say, for the southwest part. The homeowner's policy does not cover mines. You have to buy mining insurance. Why is that?
The mine subsidence is like flood insurance. It's not written through the insurance companies, but it is offered as part of your policy through the insurance companies. Those two programs, the flood program is a federal program through the National Flood Insurance Program, and then mine subsidence is written as part of a state fund program. And I think that's because of the way the legislature structured that thing when they initially put it out there. It's interesting you mention that, because lately that has become a subject of a lot of discussion. I don't know that it's critical, but you hear these stories about, well, there's mines everywhere, but nobody seems to know where they are today versus where they were. You and I have seen the old maps of where the mines used to be, but we don't know that that's where they still are today. And the one thing I've heard from a number of people recently is that the mines really weren't that deep.
No, they were
just barely underground.
They're shaft mines.
Yeah, so that it's not I think it's something people certainly needs to be cognizant of. It's a very inexpensive coverage to add to your homeowners or condo policy as an individual, but I don't know that it's something we need to really lose sleep over.
Well, we do in our area where I live, because that's where the mines started.
Right.
They started a quarter of a mile south of us, and they were at ground level. The coal was on top of the ground. They went straight north, and where I live presently, the mines are only about 50 feet below the house. And then when you keep on going, the deepest mine, or the biggest distance between the mine and the top of the ground is 164 feet.
Is that right?
So that's on the Silver Creek mine, which was the first one that was mined here in town. And we still have sinkholes. I had a sinkhole in my backyard probably 2 or 3 years ago, and I filled it and filled it and filled it. And of course, it doesn't make any difference how much you fill it, because the dirt just runs away. It's water down there and so forth, so you have to fill it with rock or concrete. And I finally put in several yards of rock, and I just checked it not too terribly long ago, and I still have a dent. So we have a lot of mines here.
Continues to settle.
Continues to
Yeah. Well,
settle.
and relative to that, you know Marion Hinkle and Grace
Very
Kurtz.
well, surely. And both.
Long time, and talk about people who have a history in this town. That family goes back forever, I think.
Well, Grace lived to be, what, 170 years old or something?
Something. I remember her telling our family, because their farm up on Broad Street was right over by my parents' house, and we used to have a garden over there, quite honestly, during the summers. She told us about having owned property out where Great Oaks is.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that when they had their farms out there and such, that to get rid of their used farm equipment, they would just throw them down the sinkholes that were out there.
Absolutely, we do the same thing.
And I, it amazes me to hear those type of stories for what must have been out there. But you don't hear of any problems relative to that today of any consequence. Now, that doesn't mean that can't change in a real hurry, but I think we've been very fortunate, and I guess lucky to this point to not have any major problem with that.
Lucky for us, the mines were only 4 feet deep. Unlucky for those people who had to work in them.
Right.
It was horrible,
Right.
just horrible.
Right.
Getting back to the company though, because this is such a, well, it's the oldest company in Wadsworth.
Correct. Yeah, we are the oldest business.
The oldest company in Wadsworth. I mean, without, we have a couple other ones that are 100 years old.
Right.
The Whitlam and the
Funeral home.
well, funeral home, and
And
also
I think
the
Bixler's are celebrating their
yeah.
100th anniversary this year.
This year. But yours is 140 years old, so it is the oldest continuous business in the city of Wadsworth, and probably the state of Ohio, who knows?
Well, I don't think it'd take it that far, but it's certainly got to be up there.
Way up
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
But what are some of the changes that are going to happen from here on in? We could talk about the history for a long, long
Sure,
time.
sure.
As a matter of fact, I knew many of the people there because I worked as let's see, that'd be about 70 years ago. Yep, 70 years ago. I worked in, 70. About 70 years ago, I worked at the B&B store, which is right, we had a wall.
Correct.
That,
adjoining wall.
Adjoining wall. And we were back and forth all of the time. And I knew many of the people who worked there, Grace Storm, Marge Geary,
Francis Sondels.
Francis Sondels.
Ruth Myers.
Well, she came in 1948. Whelan came in 48. And Bob Gaston, Clarence McMullen, George Cruz, all of them. Ike Vale, yeah, and all of them. They were just a wonderful, wonderful group of people. Yes, they were businessmen, but they were just Wadsworth citizens and so forth.
I'll tell you a quick little story.
Yeah, please.
When I came in there in '75, I was certainly by far the youngest person in the agency, probably by 15, maybe 20 years. And it was always interesting to me. On Mondays they'd come in and everybody would talk about their golf game over the weekend. And Tuesday it was, who you playing golf with on Wednesday? And Wednesday they all went and did their farm inspection out at Rawega Country Club and got their round of golf in. Thursday it was, how'd you play yesterday? And Friday it was, who you playing with over the weekend? So there was a lot of golf being played out of Allen and Hartzell during my initial years there, and I was not a golfer at that point. Bill Snoke always encouraged me to play golf and kind of got me into that game. So
what's so significant about Wednesday?
Well, it used to be that all the businesses would close at noon on Wednesdays.
Right.
And that was kind of a custom, tradition, whatever, as far as the downtown businesses, and obviously there weren't the businesses up at Great Oaks or anything like that for a long period of time. But most of the downtown businesses used to close at noon. Allen and Hartzell always was open Wednesday afternoons, but our golfers weren't there.
Your golfers weren't there.
They weren't around.
I think the reason that they, well, as a matter of fact, I know that the reason that they closed on Wednesday afternoon is that they were open on Saturday nights.
Right.
And
right.
of course, that doesn't happen anymore. Now, when we talk about the various people who are golfing and so forth, I wonder if a little bit of that could have been that a lot of deals are made on the golf course, or was it just because that's...
Absolutely. And again, that's part of the change. The business climate is very different today, but that's where people used to go and socialize and make a lot of those business deals,
Contacts.
if you will, happen. You knew one another from those types of venues, participation in things like that, and that's how business was conducted at that time. It's much more formal, I would say, today than it was then. It was a much more relaxed and, quite honestly, enjoyable climate to work in.
Today?
No, back then.
Oh, back then.
Yeah,
Back
absolutely.
then. Well,
today, you know, it's just different. Things have changed, and every business, you know, from my 40 years experience, there's a lot of things that have improved, certainly. The ability to have computers and the information available much quicker, almost to the point where it's expected to be available immediately, if not sooner. But part of that is we've lost a lot of the local flavor. Your downtown business district is a very, very different business district today than when I first started downtown in 1975.
oh, yes.
You know, you knew everybody downtown. Folks were always out on the street talking to one another. You could walk in the banks in any business and just sit down and talk with the person in charge at that point.
I do remember that as well, and it's something that is lacking now, and I think that it's one of those things that we'd like to see come back eventually, but probably won't.
I certainly would, and I think it really strengthens your business community. In communities like Wadsworth, that makes a big difference. When the business leaders are active parts of the community, as Alan and Hartzell has always tried to be, that's critical for a community. That kind of support is needed. But when you have absentee or outside ownership, there's a completely different philosophy as far as what takes place in business.
Absolutely. Toby, I don't know if this question is going to be one that we can answer, you know, legitimately, but you said several times today that there have been a lot of changes from 1875 to the present day. A lot of changes not only in personnel, but in ownerships and ways of doing business, and the insurance industry itself, and the real estate industry and so forth. As a matter of fact, at one time, didn't Alan Hartzell have a savings bank or something?
When we were building a lot of homes, we were involved with a couple of savings and loans institutions where basically we acted as their branches.
Okay.
And took payments, you know, for mortgages, that type of thing. And yeah, there were a lot of those type transactions taking place in our office.
So those are the changes from 1875 to 2014. What do you envision is going to happen? And as I say, maybe it's going to be kind of a soothsayer kind of a thing. What do you envision is going to happen between now and 140 years from now?
Wow. Yeah, you're right. I wish we had that crystal ball. Let me take it down to a little smaller vision of that at this time and talk about Alan and Hartzell specifically.
Okay.
After you've been there 40 years, you obviously have seen a lot of change. You know that there are going to be a number of changes to continue to happen. Any business out there today realizes that to continue to be relevant, you're going to have to be able to adapt to change. And at my stage of this point in my career, I think I've finally come to a realization that I'm not going to be here forever.
Oh, really?
Probably not. And maybe people don't want me around forever.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that.
Well, but you know, we'll see what happens with that. But anyway, in doing that, I have been looking for the last several years to try to find a way to perpetuate Allen and Hartzell. The history of Allen and Hartzell is extremely important to me. And I want to see whatever I can do to make sure that that history continues. As part of that, this last year, I was able to come to an agreement to merge Allen and Hartzell into the Hummel Group.
Now, what's the Hummel Group?
The Hummel Group is an insurance agency that started down in Berlin, Ohio, down in Holmes County, that has multiple offices around the state. They're in Worcester, Orville, Columbus, have an agency over in Indiana. And it's a group I have known since 1976,
really?
through Westfield companies. The three brothers that were the principals in the agency prior to their current generation in there. And I all started representing Westfield the same year of 1975, but I met them in 1976. Have always had the utmost respect for them. And as I looked around, I had talked with them over the years casually, and nothing ever came of it. A few years ago, we had a discussion, and the dynamics had changed to the point where they were willing to look at something a little further north than what they thought they had previously wanted to extend their reach.
Now, for the sake of history 50 years from now, Berlin will probably still be there, but if it's not, where is Berlin from Wadsworth?
About an hour straight south of here, down in Holmes County. It's part of the Amish area down there.
That's right. That's one of the...
And the Hummel Group is a very, very solid group in that community also, very invested, very active, and that's what I like. Because I guess I've always been brought up, and my parents taught me this, and particularly my father, in order to take from something, you've got to be willing to give back.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons that I have always enjoyed being active in the Wadsworth community. This community has supported Allen and Hartzell for 140 years. We owe the community something back. And I've participated in a number of things over the years, as have numerous people that have preceded me in the agency.
You're on the Salvation Army Board and...
Correct. Hospital Foundation Board, all kind of different things. The Wadsworth Independent Business Association, been active in the chamber. So there's a number of things. But
pardon me, I wasn't too far off when I said that you're an icon of business and human being.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But again, I think that's part of our responsibility. And as the owner of the agency for 24 years, I thought that was important. I always encourage our employees to get involved in their communities, no matter where they live. And I think that's critical. But to bring you up to date, so as of January 1 of this last year, 2014, Allen and Hartzell is now part of the Hummel Group. And I think that gives us the opportunity as we go forward. I know it gives us the opportunity. We're adding new staff. We're adding younger staff, people that are going to be there into the future to perpetuate the agency. We have a lot of new insurance markets available, which makes us more relevant in what we can provide for the community.
Could you just explain that, the new market? What is that? Well, I've been hearing about that, but I don't know what it is.
Markets are the insurance companies that you represent. Okay. And Allen and Hartzell has always been fairly limited in that area. We've always been always been very closely tied to Westfield, Ohio Farmers Insurance Company, but now have multiple companies, probably a dozen very solid property and casualty insurance companies we can offer to our clients. So it allows us to do a lot more things for the community. And I think going forward that's critical. New people, new blood, new ideas, new companies, I think gives us the opportunity to secure that future for those that will follow me.
But it'll still be Allen and Hartzell.
Absolutely. We are not changing the name at all. It will be, it's known as the Allen and Hartzell Insurance Agency. Allen and Hartzell Incorporated still exists, and that entity runs the insurance operation. So we've still got those two working very closely together. I've always felt that they really help one another. You can do some things back and forth that are helpful to your clients. So we're going to continue that. And Allen and Hartzell Insurance Agency now, as part of the Hummel Group, has a lot of new opportunities out there. And I'm excited about that. You always go through the transition and learning curve for a year or two when something like this takes place. Some of those things are not necessarily fun, but you got to work through them. Right. Systems, processes, procedures.
Like bringing two families together.
Yeah, absolutely, and blend those together. And so we're working through those, and I think that's something that time will take care of for us. We'll be able to get through that and move forward and have the opportunity to continue to be very viable, very active, very out front in the community.
I don't know if I can speak for everyone, but for myself, I'm glad that you went down into Holmes County, because I think those people down there have more of our values than, say, for instance, you would have gone to New York or something like that. They're solid people. They're good people. They are us. They are we, I should say. Make sure if that's grammatical. They are we. We are the same, of the same ilk, as it were.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
And one of the things that sold me on this arrangement was the fact that as I talked with other people, they were not the only ones that I talked with. It convinced me that we thought alike. We're conservative, and that's what's needed for our type businesses.
You have hit it right on the head, conservative, and the fact that if they're like you, and we have to say, and this is not any kind of a promotion for Allen Hartzell, but you have to say that if you've been here for 140 years, you haven't done too many things bad or wrong, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. So this is the kind of thing that we can perpetuate. We will have another Allen Hartzell, whatever you call it, whoever is involved, for another 140 years, I hope so.
I do too.
A question came up just a couple of seconds ago when you were talking that I think would be of interest, and that is when you say that you are now part of the Hummel Group, you still own Allen Hartzell, correct?
I still own Allen and Hartzell Incorporated, which is the real estate operation side of things.
And that real estate operation that you're doing right now, do you have any thoughts about what it's going to be doing in the future?
I'm not really too sure. There's a lot of things taking place right now that, there's some dynamic possibility for changes in this community yet. The Brickyard.
That's what I was hoping you would talk about.
Some of the things that we've been very instrumental with, and I guess we can talk about that, in working with the city to make that property a viable site for some development. My real estate broker, Linda Bowers, who is extremely knowledgeable in those types of areas, has basically put that together for the city and the township to make that something that I think has tremendous growth possibility for this community from a residential and a commercial industrial base, and bringing some new job opportunities to Wadsworth.
That, a while ago we talked about the fact that you don't have any more developments in Wadsworth because there's no more place to expand. We now have, how big is the Brickyard?
My understanding is 280 acres.
280 acres. That's a lot of land.
A lot of land.
That's a lot of land.
Right.
And that means that we can expand some of the things that we really need here in Wadsworth. What kinds of things would you envision would be going down there?
It's interesting because there's been a lot of thoughts about that and comments and just conjecture on who might be interested. My understanding is at this time they're looking to take 80 acres of that and make it residential. So that will be a number of new homes down in that area as this plays out, and I don't know what that time period is, but a lot of that will depend on the economy of the area and how developers see that. The other commercial industrial part, obviously there's a railroad
Right next door.
tied down in there that would be of value to several businesses. So it may be not just service type industries, but some fairly heavy manufacturing industrial type plants that would come into that area.
And those people, those kinds of entities bring a lot of tax dollars into the city.
Absolutely.
A lot of tax dollars.
And in addition to that, you need service businesses to take care of those
That's
people.
right. Mm-hmm.
So I think it's one of these things that has the potential to really snowball and provide some very strong economic lift to this community.
So Alan Hartzell, for the past 140 years, has been doing a lot of things to help build Wadsworth, not only as far as the developments. The first ones to come up was north of town with those beautiful homes, and also to protect people with insurance and things of this nature. And that's going to continue.
Yes.
And it's going to continue because what?
We're going to make sure the right people are in place to make that happen.
So it doesn't make any bit of difference what the bricks are and what the structure of the organization. It's the people.
Absolutely.
And this is what I was hoping that you would say.
Absolutely.
The people, and the people that we like to talk to and like to deal with are the types of people who are just like us.
That's what we wanted. Yeah. You know, we want to make this transition as smooth, as seamless as possible, to the point where you really don't know anything's happened. But you talk about the people, Caesar, and the people that have preceded me at Allen and Hartzell have been of the same mindset. They're people that are concerned about their community, concerned about their neighbors. And because of that, this community has supported us. And we're very, very thankful for that. You know, it's the type of situation where everybody wins in the deal. We're not afraid to get involved, to support things, to get our hands dirty, to volunteer to help out wherever we can, and yet make a viable business that goes on throughout the years.
The word that you used there, a viable business. There are a lot of businesses that are viable, but they're also greedy. And I think that one of the things that Alan Hartzell has been able to do over the years is to give the illusion, not the illusion because that would be somewhat fake, but to give the reality to the fact that it does want to be a partner with Wadsworth. And two things come to mind immediately. One, for the fact that you've been here for 140 years and still here, and the fact that everything that you've said so far points to wanting to continue with this kind of experience with the city of Wadsworth. So, yeah, I guess without being sentimental about it, it makes those of us who are veterans of Wadsworth, or in my case, a native of Wadsworth, feel very comfortable in the fact that we will never have anything but an Allen and Hartzell, and it'll continue all the way down the line. We have very, very little time left. One of the things I would like to ask you to do at this point, if you can, is to give some of your own personal reflections on how you think the city of Wadsworth is going to develop, and what part will you play, not you necessarily as a human being, because although you're going to live forever, right? You're right.
Sure.
That's right.
Yes.
You said a little while
Thank
ago
you.
that if you don't, if you might not be here someday, well, you're going to live forever.
All right.
What kinds of things do you think that you, as Alan Hartzell, will help to make this progression for Wadsworth?
I hope we continue to do what we have been doing and be an active participant in the community. I expect that will happen. I think that's critical, but again, it comes down to the people. And we have to make sure that we put the right people in place that understand the value of being part of the community. That's critical. You know, I know the city is working with downtown Wadsworth now about becoming a Main Street community. Mm-hmm. I think something like that is a great step forward. we've just got to try to get everybody on the same page and understanding the big long-term picture for this community. You talked about greed and those type of things. I understand that. That's out there every day. We're all aware of that. But I think when we all recognize that if we're working toward the same long-term goal, everyone will benefit as we go down the road with these type projects. And Allen and Hartzell will be there, I'm sure, to be part of that in any way we can. We support things financially, we support things with our time and energies. So I see us continuing to do that, and I push every day for our team down there to do whatever we can to participate when we can.
We have just a few more seconds left. What are your plans for your retirement, if you retire, since you're going to live forever?
Yeah, I don't have any plans to retire currently.
Good.
I know that will come someday, but at this point, I still enjoy very much what I do. And again, that involves working with people. Mm-hmm. So my intent is to stay on as part of the team at Allen and Hartzell as long as they'll have me, and going forward to continue to do whatever I can to stay involved in the community, help out wherever I can, to help the new team at Allen and Hartzell get acclimated and do whatever's necessary to continue that legacy down there.
And with the next few seconds, how about telling us about children, grandchildren?
I have no children and have no grandchildren,
Well.
So from that standpoint.
That certainly is a way of putting it.
Right.
But how about your likes and dislikes? I mean, what do you do for fun?
I love to travel. Chris and I really enjoy traveling. We've been very fortunate the last several years to do a lot of hiking in Europe, mm-hmm. And have really enjoyed that and want to continue to do that. We both enjoy the outdoors. We just enjoy being out and about doing a variety of different things. A little bit of golf, not like the folks used to do, but hopefully continue to just enjoy those type of things and keep our health is the most important thing.
Well, you look very healthy.
Thank you.
And you look svelte and so forth, so you probably have a long life to lead, and we hope that you do. We want to thank you very much for everything that you've told us today, because this is what Wadsworth is. That is history. Thank you.